Hi everyone, it's Ren here. In this video I'm going to talk about what I think discovering that I was INFJ changed for me. Because we tend to hear often that when someone discovers their type, there's different things that can happen. One of the things that can happen is that the person says, that's completely bullshit. Okay, so it's a question that we're familiar with. Another possibility is that we hear the person say, it's not quite bullshit. It rings anecdotally true, but it's mostly just like astrology, right? So that's not going to be very helpful. Then you have a third level. I think that where the person is kind of taking it seriously, like they remember what their type is, but they continue being somewhat skeptical with regards to some finer ramifications of it, saying, for instance, there's no way that the world only holds like 16 types or something, and no more. And we hear that often as well. And then there's also categories of people who take it a bit more to heart, and I think maybe there are mostly two categories here that I can think about. It's probably more, but just off the top of my mind, there's a category which tends to embrace the type a little too eagerly, as if it was to summarize the whole of their being, and he might even be tempted to sort of like push a square peg into a circle. They'll start unconsciously or consciously trying to act like the type that they have discovered. Maybe they do identify with that type, but there could be a level of overacting involved. And then finally there's the category to which I hope I belong, to whom discovering one's type is a long process of self-discovery, which is not only about the type. It's almost as if the type was a gate opening towards a vast field of other possibilities. And in that domain, I would say that you find what's most interesting about MBTI. It's that gate, opening that gate towards self-discovery, self-development, improving oneself in the best sense of the term, being in touch with one true self, developing more self-awareness for the benefit of others as well, because a self-aware person is always going to be a benefit to others compared to a non-self-aware person. And so I think, categorize myself as belonging to that category, the category of the people for whom the type is a development, and that's also why I continue to be interested in it, and the reason why I make videos about it. But I think that if it was only about just the type itself, about being rare, about being unique, about being a unicorn, or about being smart, about being abstract, about whatever, I'd get tired of it sooner or later. And I think sooner rather than later. But when it opens the gate toward a process that essentially is infinite, I find that very compelling, because that's what it does. It opens the gate toward a form of self-engagement that can pretty much end with your death. I mean, let's not talk about death necessarily here, but it just, it's I often see it as one of the keys to aging well, to remain self-aware, playful and self-aware. But this idea of engaging with one's type as a process of self-discovery throughout life, I think, in a way, can guarantee both the playfulness and the self-awareness and the cultivation of them, And so that's kind of my lens, my perspective on it. And I was, as you know by now probably, I I was quite late discovering that I was INFJ. For a long time I thought I was an NT person because of TI mostly, and occasionally flirted with INTJ for NI, while still thinking I was a T. And yeah, like the INFJ type came to me late, which means that I had this whole maturation process happening. And by then it had already changed things in my life, to tie things back to the topic that I want to cover today, which is how my life has been impacted by the discovery of my type. Well, as you can understand by now, after this long preamble, my life has been impacted by it, not as something that I suddenly realized and which explained everything, but more as something that gave me the keys to certain things that I didn't quite understand before, which will allow me, or which have allowed me and hopefully will continue to allow me, to negotiate reality, contact with others, communication, managing my goals, remaining faithful to myself in a way that is a little sharper, more refined, more self-confident also, than in the past. And I think that's the main takeaway, is to give me the keys towards these solutions. I do think that discovering, the whole thing about INFJ has helped me become more confident. And by that I mean more comfortable in my shoes. Because in order to be confident, you need to accept yourself. In order to accept yourself, you need to know yourself a little bit. In order to know yourself, well, you need to figure it out. And for some people, maybe it's more of an innate thing or a more instinctive thing. For me, I'm a very cerebral person, so I often felt a sense of detachment from my own self, which I think happens to many INFJs from what accounts I hear sometimes. And that self-confidence, that self-acceptance that was brought into the picture, very interestingly corresponded with a certain relinquishing of my conviction that I was a T user, because I am like at the very beginning of my 30s now, and I've been embracing my INFJ identity for about a year. So I would have been 30 years old when I became more conscious of it. And I think that if you were to compare my 20s, let's say, during which I may have been aware of my identity, my typological identity, and I wasn't, to now, I mean, there are very big differences. And of course, the differences are by no means only the product of this discovery. But this discovery has had an impact, undoubtedly. And if I were to compare my 20s to my 30s as far as they have unfolded so far, I would say that one of the main differences, and I don't think it only has to do with becoming more mature, more adult, older, if you like, is this relinquishing of this conviction that I was a T user, which at the time, not really mastering the vocabulary, I quite simply, straightforwardly defined as a conviction that I was a very logical person, rational person, not likely to be swayed by emotion, and that I was kind of tough as a logical person. Therefore, that I was not to take into account the emotions and states of feelings of others that much. And I swear to you, maybe this will be surprising to you, but I went through a period in my 20s when, I just had this idea, that, and maybe it also had to do with a projection towards what an ideal form of masculinity incarnated, or an approach to appealing to women, let's say, to not appear too sensitive. And it's funny because that corresponded paradoxically with a great deal of insecurity. And what's even more paradoxical is that in that period, I was also more extroverted, which suggests that or at least I appeared more extroverted. I was always partying, I was always talking to people, I had lots of friends. I still have lots of friends, but the relationships I think are a bit less party related. I was more extroverted in appearance and less sensitive, more cutting, if you like, and at the same time more insecure. Now I'm less extroverted to some extent. I'm much more in tune with my feelings and my empathy, and I feel much more secure. Not completely secure, much more secure, more comfortable in myself, much less likely to take criticism badly. And how ironic is it that embracing from a certain perspective a type, a movement toward a type that is supposed and known to not take criticism well, or at least to be upset by it, not necessarily offended, but to take it very much to heart. How ironic that embracing it more openly made it much easier for me to take criticism badly, because at a much more profound level I had, if you like, accepted just what I was made of, and I felt to myself I can liberate myself from the pressure of seeming this, that, and the other, which I was not really. So instead of every day having to cultivate a sense of like not being easily swayed by things or sensitive by things, just letting things go and realizing that people don't suddenly think that I'm a different person or that I'm a weaker person. On the contrary, because being in touch with my FE more as an INFJ has allowed me to, contrary to what was the case in my 20s, where there was a lot of talking, bragging sometimes, but I think not a lot of convincing. Nowadays, I think that people listen to me more. In a way, I have more influence, if influence was what I was looking for. I think I have more, because I seem to come from a place of more authenticity and more wisdom, perhaps, to some extent. And again, it's not only the MBTI that does that, but it's far from it. In fact, it's not at all the MBTI that does that. Again, I think I see it as a gate to discovering yourself, giving you the keys to understanding the way in which you tend to function, and so trying to be in harmony as much as possible, in harmony with it. And I've definitely attained a level of harmony that I had not known before in my life. And as a result of that, I tend to be, I guess, like less likely to be upset by things, less likely to be taken aback by things in a bad way, at least. I feel like there is more solidity to the ground below my feet. That's how I would take it. And the difference between my 20s and my early 30s in that respect is quite striking, I think. There's more internal peace, and it comes from this sense of harmony, because obviously if there is this harmony, there is nervous stress, and it comes from a sense of not being peaceful inside. So there is definitely that. And if you think about it, when I was in my 20s, I wasn't engaging with MBTI, but I was definitely trying to embrace, consciously or unconsciously, and like everybody else, models that came from the outside world. Were those models that are culturally appropriated more truthful than the Jungian model and its supposed lack of credibility? I don't think so. I think the Jungian model has the merit of actually saying something true about someone's personality and someone's identity. It says at least something true about it, and that's very valuable. And it has helped me to become, I think, who I was. And this is something that N.I. said. Nietzsche said it. INTJ, unfortunately. No, unfortunately, INTJ, because I don't like INTJs, but we cannot claim it for ourselves as INFJs. But Nietzsche said, become who you are. And I think that everyone in the world is engaged, throughout life in the process of becoming who they are, who they really are, and the self-acceptance that comes along with it. And I'm engaged in that too, and the key that was given me by the discovery of the Jungian cognitive functions and the INFJ type is a very valuable key. And I would love to hear your own experience in that regard. Have a great day, guys. See ya.